All right. Okay. So this year we're going to kind of call it the Sunday share is the Hagdama, and this year is going to be Chazzarah u'LeMaaseh, meaning Chazzarah review and Lemaaseh. We'll try to add some practical application. It's my first time doing this, so I'm going to try this format and see how it works, and we'll switch it up if it doesn't work out so well. So the format I want to do is I'm going to read from the Shulchan Aruch itself, and then as we go along, I'm going to stop and add some details that are not directly in the Shulchan Aruch or some other practical things or some other backgrounds and whatnot. Okay, yeah, you can put your stuff down, don't worry. So let's begin then. Kufay, everybody has the page. I'm going to read in the Hebrew, and you can follow along in the English or the Hebrew. So Kufay, chapter 105, Din Isser Shenafa L'Tay Chater. The law of that which is forbidden, that falls into that which is permitted, which is essentially the essence of Taruvus, as we explained in our introduction, the transference of flavor between kosher and non-kosher, from non-kosher to kosher specifically, rendering the kosher no longer kosher because it absorbed that flavor. That's the laws here. As we explained in our introduction, this is why we're beginning with these laws, because this is the essence of the whole Taruvus, of the whole mixing halachas. So halacha aleph, Isser shenosharim heter, prohibited items. Shenosher literally means that rested or soaked, pickled, im heter, together with permissible items, me'es la'es for 24 hours, bitzoinen, even though the item or the juice in which it is soaked is cold, mikri kavosh is considered pickled. So if it's soaked in liquid for 24 hours, it's called pickled, and that's as if it was cooked. This is the principle we explained in our introduction. Kavosh kumavushal, that pickled is like it's cooked. Sitting in liquid for 24 hours constitutes pickling and thus constitutes cooking. The neser kuloi, and everything becomes prohibited because all the flavor transfers from one to the next. So a few different details. Number one, the question of kavosh kumavushal, that pickling is considered like cooking, is minat Torah. It's a biblical consideration. Not just that rabbinic, the sages enacted that we're going to treat pickling like cooking, but biblically it constitutes cooking. Because again, biblically, in the essence, the point is that flavor transfers from one to the next. That's the problem. Biblically, tam ke'ikr, as we explained in our introduction, that the flavor is as if the item itself is there. And therefore, it doesn't really matter how it happens. So long as the flavor transfers from one thing to the next, it's biblically a problem. Now, why is that relevant? This is going to become relevant because we have a principle like this, that whenever you're in doubt about something that's biblical, you go stringent. Whenever you have a doubt in something that's rabbinic, you go lenient. So because kavosh kumavushal is daraisa, because pickling is considered cooking biblically, therefore, if there's a doubt, right, as the halacha later says, that if you're in doubt with regard to the pickling, we treat it stringent. Now, this is going to be very relevant, especially when it comes to the laws of basar b'chalav, the laws of milk and meat, which we're going to get to in the next chapter when we get to that. Milk and meat, as we explained, is not inherently forbidden. Here in Taruvus, we're talking about forbidden items falling into kosher items. So forbidden piece of meat falling in a forbidden piece of meat and a kosher piece of meat soaking in water together. That's what we're talking about here, right? But milk and meat is not inherently unkosher. Only in the mixing is it kosher. Only in the mixing does it become prohibited. So biblically speaking, only if it's cooked together is it considered biblically prohibited. The pasuk says, do not cook a kid in its mother's milk. That's how we know the prohibition of milk and meat. So biblically speaking, the issue of milk and meat is not a question of transference of flavor, as it is with the case of, biblically speaking, any other non-kosher item where the flavor is being transferred. In milk and meat, it's not a question of did the flavor of the milk go to the meat and vice versa. At least biblically speaking, that's not the problem. Biblically speaking, the problem is only did it cook together. So, nonetheless, transferring of flavor from milk and meat would be prohibited, not biblically, only what? Rabbinically. The sages say that other types of flavoring transfer of milk and meat is also going to be prohibited. But biblically, only if it's cooked together does it become prohibited. And therefore, if milk and meat, a piece of cheese and a piece of meat are soaking in the same water together for 24 hours, there's no cooking. So it's prohibited only rabbinically. And therefore, if you're in a doubt if milk and meat soak for 24 hours, what would be the halacha? Lenient. Because if it's rabbinic, it's lenient. And because the prohibition of milk and meat is not a question of transference of flavor, but a question of, biblically speaking at least, it's only a question of cooking. If it's not cooked, even if there's a transfer of flavor, it's only rabbinically prohibited. Whereas when it comes to other forms of taruvus, which we're learning here, forbidden food, directly forbidden food, non-kosher meat, in contact with kosher meat, it's a question not of cooking, but of transference of flavor. And therefore, biblically, pickled is prohibited as well. Clear on this? What? Only 24 hours does the full flavor transfer happen, right? Okay.
It says less than that is for there's no issue. You can pull it out with no issue.
Say it again.
Less than 24 hours, you can pull it out with no issue.
Oh, so it said the halacha. Let's see the halacha. Right? What does the Shulchan Aruch say? The Shulchan Aruch says, "Aval pachas mikan," but less than 24 hours. Ba'adacha. Then the pasagi, it's enough to just wash it off.
Exactly.
That's it. Because the transference flavor didn't happen.
How do we know it's the lighthouse?
That's that all the poskim write. That kavish k'mavushal is the raisa. But I'm explaining here, yeah, that the vort is because the problem is transference of flavor. Tam ki'ikar. That's the main thing here. In when it comes to prohibited food, the problem is tam ki'ikar. That when you have the flavor of the non-kosher item, it's considered as if the thing itself is there. We're going to put some limitations on kavish k'mavushal soon. It's not mamish like kavish k'mavushal. We'll see some examples of that. But at least it is inherently biblical. That's how the poskim rule. Right? Where the sources, what's they say here? Yeah. So actually, the source is, and the fact that the Torah limits milk and meat to only cooking means in other cases it's even not cooking. It's any transference of flavor.
But the idea of the pickling is also because vinegar is a strong taste, so that allows for
okay, so we'll get to vinegar soon, yes, but you're right. The stronger thing changes the transference of flavor.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, another item to keep in mind here is a few things. Number one, that 24 hours is 24 hours consecutive 24 hours.
Yes.
Not if it's moved one to the next. It doesn't have that same effect. If it's not 24 hours, so if it's taken out and put into another brine, another mixture, it doesn't constitute non-kosher. Another important element is that sorry, yeah?
24 hours. Purposely do 23 hours?
No.
Or is it
I
like
don't think so.
it's like you're not supposed to, but if it happens, then you're okay.
Yeah, I don't think
Can you
you're
purposely do it?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No. So it's consecutive hours. And the other thing to consider is that the liquid referring to here is the kind of liquid where the items inside can move around. And this Sefer Psakim V'Tshuvos, well-known Sefer, compiler of modern halacha, rules that such items like mayonnaise would not constitute as soaking. Meaning if you had a big bucket of mayonnaise and a non-kosher piece of meat and a kosher piece of meat, the flavor would not transfer from one to the next. Because it's not liquidy enough to have that effect. Same thing is true with ice. Right? Which is why you could have things in the freezer. So, he's right. So it's right, it doesn't soak. So you can have things next to each other in the freezer, nothing happens. Yeah, that's the point there. Okay. Before we go forward, the next item here is you would see in the summaries and in the text itself, where they have a summary of the Taz on the side, a discussion about the nature of this principle of kavush k'mavushal. Pickling is like cooking with respect to utensils. So if something soaks, if non-kosher food item is soaking in a vessel, that vessel becomes for 24 hours, and that vessel becomes non-kosher. And you'd have to kosherize it if you want to use it, let's say to cook something. Right? So if a pot, and inside the pot, non-kosher stew was sitting there for 24 hours, that pot now absorbed the flavor of the non-kosher stew, as per the principle of kavush k'mavushal, pickling is like cooking. And then if you want to use that pot, then you could not use that pot to cook a kosher piece of meat in it, because the flavor from the pot would go back to the kosher meat. Yeah, that's the basic idea that Taz says. Yes? Okay. And the Taz adds another element, which is like this. Okay, that's clear, yes? That would be, no one would disagree with that halacha. Now, the Taz adds another element, and here I want to share two more terminologies that are going to be relevant to our semicha going forward. It's not the main subject here, but these are principles that are important. Principle number one is Nosein tam l'fgam versus nosein tam l'shvach. So nosein tam means gives flavor. And when it gives flavor, it's either lifgam, to detriment, or lishvach, to enhance. So we have this principle tam ke'ikr, that the flavor itself, as if the item itself is there. So when the flavor is here, it's as if the non-kosher item is here, even though the non-kosher item is gone, but the flavor is still around, so it's as if the non-kosher item is here. That principle to prohibit something else is only true if the flavor it's emitting is a positive flavor. It enhances the food. Right? So if you have a non-kosher piece of meat soaking with kosher meat, the flavor going to the kosher meat from the non-kosher meat is going to be a positive flavor. All meat is positive flavor for meat. Right? But if that, let's say that non-kosher piece of meat was rotten, so rotten that whatever, it was just completely rotten, and the flavor it gives to the kosher meat is to the detriment of the kosher meat, then it would be not problematic. Okay, the details of this are going to come later. This is very relevant to our subject here and actually very practical in your kitchen. How so? Because again, we just learned from the Taz that if a food item is absorbed into a keli, into a vessel, either absorbed via cooking, because I cook meat in that vessel, or because the meat soaked in that vessel for 24 hours. Either way, that thing absorbed. And now the nosein tam l'shvach, the flavor that it's going to emit, positively has an expiration, has a time limit. After 24 hours, this is the halacha determines that after 24 hours, the flavor emitted is no longer positive, but it's detrimental because it's like rotten. It's 24 hours old. Not if the actual piece of non-kosher meat was there, but if all you have left is the flavor absorbed in that pot. 24 hours later, the flavor that this pot emits will no longer be positive. Clear on that? So, which is why the rabbi's going to ask when you call to say, I accidentally used the milchik pot to cook. I accidentally used the dairy pot to cook meat. The rabbi's going to ask, when was the last time it was used for meat? Because if the last time it absorbed meat was more than 24 hours ago, then the flavor it's emitting is a negative flavor and it's not going to render your milk in kosher, non-kosher. The same thing is true, by the way, with soaps. Soap renders flavor detrimental, which is why it's not impossible, but it doesn't often happen that utensils become non-kosher because they were in the dishwasher with the opposite, with milk and meat together in the dishwasher. Because if it's done with soap, then the soap makes the flavor detrimental. It's not always the case because if you have chunks of meat, it changes. If you have chunks of milk, it also would chunks of cheese, it would change. But assuming it's only flavor, no actual items in milk and meat, then the soap would ruin the flavor, make it detrimental, therefore not make it in kosher. Likewise, if the utensil has been used for 24 hours. Clear? This principle of 24 hours is called ben yomo. Ben yomo means it's a day old. So the question is going to become, is this flavor a day old? And if it's already ben yomo, then it's no longer positive flavor, it's detrimental flavor, and we don't care about it anymore. Or does it
mean over 24 hours?
Over 24 hours, it's
Ben Yom, the definition is 1 day old, meaning 24
no.
hours?
So Ben Yom actually means it's within the 24 hours. It's still within the day. Ben Yom, it's a son of a day. It means it's within the day. Ain't a Ben Yom, it's no longer a day old. It's more than a day old. So Ben Yom means it's within the day. So if the spoon is Ben Yom, it's still active. It still can add active positive flavor to the next thing.
Even with soap.
Okay, soap would render it negative flavor.
So even if you use, let's say you accidentally put the dairy spoon in your meat dish or all your meat dishes, and it ran with soap, would there be an issue?
In most cases, no. Because you don't do it to begin with, but in most cases, no. Unless you might have an actual chunk of meat in there.
The spoon was rinsed.
So if everything's rinsed before,
The spoon was rinsed.
right? So,
Yeah,
but if
sure.
you have
All the
actual pieces, you might change the halacha
Oh,
because
so there's actual pieces of.
Yeah.
Assumed everything is rinsed.
exactly.
Normal, huh?
Assume everything's rinsed, then
Then you
so
don't
that,
have an issue.
but these are the kinds of questions that a Rav would have to ask.
Yeah.
Right? When was the last time you used it? How did you clean it? How hot was the water when you cleaned it? When was the last time it was used? Were there actual chunks of meat and milk in there?
I
Right?
understand.
This is the most common question. My cleaning lady accidentally washed the dairy dish in the fleshik sink. Right? And, the gut instinct is to throw it out.
Mhm.
Let's calm down for a second.
It's very hard to make a trick.
It's very hard to make a treif. It's very difficult to make a treif in a sink.
Right.
Because how are you transferring flavor there? How is flavor being transferred from
Right.
the sink magically to that pot? Especially since she's using soap and it's usually not that hot, the water, right? So, and maybe it wasn't used until in 24 hours. It becomes very difficult to make these things non-kosher. right? Okay, so now Taz adds like this. The principle of Ben Yomo, the principle of the 24 hours, is that within 24 hours, it's still giving a positive flavor. What if you have an item which gives positive flavor even after 24 hours? What's an example of something that gives positive flavor even after 24 hours?
The cast.
Oh, that's why I posed the question in the group. Yeah, because wine ages. Wine ages. So you soak a barrel in sherry wine, then you empty it out. It's kavush kumavushal. The barrel now absorbed the flavor via pickling because it's been sitting there for not for 24 hours, it's sitting for 6 months, right? And now you're putting whiskey in there. Yeah. Now the whiskey doesn't come out till 12 years later, right? So you can make the case, well, the non-kosher wine that was there 12 years ago is already negative flavor because it's over 24 hours. But is that true? Is it a negative flavor?
No.
It's decidedly a positive one.
Yeah.
That's why you're paying the extra for the sherry cask, right? So the Taz would argue, that's what Taz says here, that would be a problem.
That says you need a hagala for that.
You would have to, that's right, you'd have to burn out the flavor of the sherry before you put the whiskey in there because it's not detrimental to 24 hours. Anyway, the Taz is not the only view. There are other opinions. And God willing, Shabbos afternoon, I hope to be prepared to share at Shabbos afternoon all the different opinions on this matter. But you can see already how these principles play into all kinds of practical things, including down to the sherry cask. That's what it comes down to. Is the sherry flavor a detrimental flavor because it's been 12 years since it was in there? Or is it a positive flavor because, look, that's why I'm doing it? And wine ages with time, doesn't get worse. All right. Clear so far?
Yeah.
Let's look at this. Okay. Okay, just before we go forward, 2 caveats on. Okay, there's a discussion as to which type of vessels absorb. Is it only wood and earthenware, which are much softer, which will absorb through soaking through Kevisha, or also metal? And in cases where there's a question of major monetary loss, we can be lenient, and the same thing is true of plastic. Glass, however, doesn't absorb in the same way, and mostly are lenient. Okay, we'll get to that. We'll get to. Yeah, when it comes to other things, not when it comes to kavush. When it comes to cooking, yeah, but not when it comes to kavush. Yeah. Okay, so something else I wanted to share.
It's funny because in Israel, a lot of people only have one sink, and they only use glass as their things, just to avoid any shilas. Because if you have glass, then you never have a real.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do this one. Okay, let's go forward. Yeah, that's the big. There's a big machlekes about glass. When it comes to soaking, it's pretty lenient. When it comes to soaking, we treat glass leniently, even though there's a dispute about glass. All right, let's go forward in the Shulchan Aruch. Okay, let's see. We'll get to all this. We'll get to that.
Because they didn't have the same energy.
Okay, let's go forward. So continues the let's get to the text Rama. In any place. So context, right? Mechaber literally means the author. That's the Shulchan Aruch himself. That's the Beis Yosef, and the Rama, his glosses, the Ashkenazi glosses. Just if you haven't yet, I recommend. I have a 5-part class online where I do the history of halacha, the halachic evolution from Sinai till today. I follow the Chabad line, so it goes down to Minhag Chabad. But it's worthwhile to give you context of where the Shulchan Aruch is placed, just contextually where it came from and how it all works. And it'll be very helpful. I'll post it, yeah. Okay. So let's continue. Rama. It says, in any area, where we say kavush kamavoshel, whenever we say that our pickling is treated as if cooking happened, afilu masha chutz lekvisha aser, even that which is protruding outside of the pickling is also forbidden. The idea kvisha shalamata, because the bottom half, which is within the pickling, is getting pickled. Mifafea lamaila, it kind of travels upwards, it bubbles upwards, the flavor bubbles upwards. Kamay bebishul, just like by cooking. Right? Sorry? Tatagover is a similar principle, but we'll get actually it's a little bit related soon. But yeah, kind of. Okay, not mamish exactly, but kind of. Okay, so when it comes to cooking, everybody will agree, and you can visualize this. You put if you fill up a pot of water a quarter of an inch or half an inch, and you put a 1-inch steak. the whole thing's gonna get cooked, not just the part that's in the water, right? So obviously the flavor would travel upward when you're cooking. That's everybody agrees. The question is, does the same thing happen by pickling? To which he says that is the case. It does travel upwards, but there are those who are lenient. Okay, so how do we rule in this regard? How do we rule? Right? How do we rule? And what do we say? What do they say in the summaries there? You remember?
Top layer.
No, that does the
If you want, if
does the flavor travel upward? No, that which is out popping outside.
That's what we
Ah,
said. It's
okay, so
fatty-
there was-
fatty piece of
Fatty
meat.
Oh.
But no, but they also said you can't tell the difference between fatty and lean.
no,
What
there
does
is a
I?
difference.
Yeah.
There is. They said most people can't tell.
So yes, that's indeed that's indeed the case. We rule, even though, as you see, the Shulchan Aruch, the Ramah brings lenient opinions. We are of the view. We rule that it does travel upward if the item is fatty. It's a fatty flavor.
Yeah.
The fatty element will help it travel upward. But because we cannot demarcate the exact line between fatty and lean.
Yeah.
We treat all of it as if it were fatty, and therefore we even that which is protruding outside of the brine, outside of the liquid, outside of pickling, is still forbidden.
What?
Unless if it's a case of grace loss, we can rely on the fact that it's lean.
Yeah.
Sorry,
It's a big monetary loss.
it's a big monetary
but
loss,
no,
and we can
it's
rely on the
sticking
view
out.
that say that lean is.
Summary said differently.
What did summary say?
It said you can cut it. Everything that's outside is
You can-
considered okay.
That's a leniency.
No, the Alter Rebbe no, but what? Show
In
me.
the summer, in the summer.
Yeah,
That's not an Alter Rebbe?
Yeah, that's what it said.
I thought here we weren't.
We're machmir if it's not a big monetary loss, but if it's a big loss,
Yeah,
then
Bob,
you,
not
you
Rebbe.
can,
Sure.
you can have.
Yeah, let's see.
That's what we got.
Let's read it.
Yeah.
I'll take their word for it.
Here, yeah, this is it's right here.
Let's read. What does it say? The halacha, pickling piece of water out.
We have that book.
The Shach writes that the
Yeah,
primary
yeah,
opinion is those who are
it's
lenient,
summary,
and this is
it's
also the Alter Rebbe's opinion.
Yeah.
In water, okay, maybe it's something.
In
else.
water, dafka, yeah.
And
Okay,
water.
that's what we're saying. Water.
Yes, dafka in water, dafka in water.
Water
Water
different
makes
than
sense.
brine.
Yeah,
Brine
yeah.
is
Very, very
salt.
good. Yes. Okay, yes, my apologies. I mixed up. Yeah, correct. In water, you're right. Very good.
Brian, I
The
think
top half is kosher. With
yeah.
brine, we are stringent
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
treat all things as fatty. Okay, do you have anything else here? Okay. Okay, let's keep going then in the Shulchan Aruch. The Safek Kavush,
But
it's
this could be lenient.
sorry,
Water.
In water,
This
it's water.
That's for the juicy for the brine.
if it's a monetary big loss and it's lean, then we'll be lenient. Yeah. Okay, let's keep going then. The Safek Kavush, if we're in a doubt as to whether or not the pickling took effect, there's different ways to understand this doubt. The classic way, as I think is in the summary, is that if you're in doubt as to whether or not it was actually 24 hours. Yeah, but there are other types of doubts also. Also, it is forbidden. And we explained already earlier, because we treat the transferring of flavor and pickling as biblical as cooking, therefore we go stringent. Milvad, with the exception of the basarim chalav. When you're talking about milk and meat that were in a liquid soaking together, does lina lokula, where there we go lenient. Because minatayra, because biblically, a na'asar is only forbidden in rakva bishul mamish. We explained before that milk and meat are not inherently prohibited, they're only prohibited in the mixture, and the Torah limits the biblical prohibition to mixing milk and meat via cooking, and therefore, if it's any other kind of mixing, it's only rabbinically forbidden, and therefore, in a case of doubt, we go lenient. Yeah, this we explained already. Okay. Now, the aim continues back to the main Shulchan Aruch. If it's being pickled within a brine that is a salty substance, a salty liquid, or within vinegar, if the items were left to pickle as long as it would take for something, so long that if this same item were put onto a pot, onto a fire would boil, which we said is either 18 minutes or 24 minutes, the yaskal is bashal and start to cook, to treat it as if it's cooking. Less than that, you only have to take off, peel out the outer layer. Let's make this clear. So according to the Shulchan Aruch, there's no difference between brine and vinegar. That's the Shulchan Aruch's view, the Machaber's view. There's no difference between brine and vinegar. Number one. Number two, full transference of flavor in brine and vinegar will only happen after 18 or 24 minutes. Anything less than that, you have to remove the outer layer. That's what the Shulchan Aruch said.
That's already a chiddush compared to water.
That's right. First of all, it's much faster than water.
No, but think within less than this year, there's something that
Correct.
you have to do.
So there's two chidushim here. There's two differences between water. Number one, the amount of time it takes for flavor to transfer is not 24 hours. It's only 18, 24 minutes. Number one. Number two, if it's less than the amount, in water, rinse it off. And brine or vinegar, you have to peel off the outer layer because something did start to happen. Okay? That's as far as the Shulchan Aruch goes. But the Ramah doesn't tell us any law, but he tells us where to go. He says in his little parentheses in the gloss, Va'ayin le'il, see earlier, Simin Ayin, chapter 70, Medin Basar Shenafal Etzir, with respect to the law of meat that falls into brine. What did the Ramah say there? The Ramah says over there like this. Whatever's inside the brine becomes immediately forbidden without any amount of time. Because salting is like boiling, not like the Shulchan Aruch, it happens right away.
No, in boiling, there's no time limit either.
Correct.
As soon as it's boiling.
Correct. Right away. Yep.
But I have a shaila about that. So it says that you can assume that if the water's been on the fire for 18 minutes, it reached the level of
Boiling.
for sure, boiling, right?
It's more than just yatzah. It's much higher than
Right.
yatzah. It's the
It's
point of
cooking.
cooking.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So now the question is there a time limit, for example, when you have brine? Because brine, you mix, you take your salt,
It says 18 minutes.
Says the Ramah immediately.
Oh yeah, I thought that after 18 minutes.
That was the Shulchan Aruch's view.
Oh,
But what does the summary say? Look at the summary. What does the summary say from the Ramah?
So basically,
Have a look at the summary. What did the summary say from the Ramah about brine? How long it takes? Have a look. Yeah. What do you say? Sorry, what were we going to say, Mayor?
no, that was my question. So, for example, we know that for cooking, it has to be on the fire for at least 18 minutes, and then right away it's considered as if it's starting to cook from the second that you put it in.
Right.
But now, if you have salt and water, a brine, or vinegar, as soon as the piece of meat enters that solution, it's instantly considered.
So I want to show you. If you have the visualization, I'll show you.
Yeah.
Someone has you have the visualization? Okay. So if you look at the visualization on page, where is it?
They don't have page numbers. Oh, it's 74.
Oh, there's page number.
It's,
Yeah.
no, it's higher. It's like page 84.
Page 74. 74.
74.
Yes. So look at the language of the Gemara. So in the middle box, they quote the Gemara. This is the source of this. It says like this: salted is like boiling, pickled is like cooked. Salted is like boiling, pickled is like cooked. Okay, so pickled is like cooked. We got that. So as long as you reach the point of pickling, so liquid it takes 24 hours.
Pickling is 18 minutes.
But salted is like boiling. What does that mean?
It's instant.
So that means you have to wait till the amount of time it takes to boil,
No, it's already done. It's there.
or it's
right away.
considered boiling.
Considered
And if
boiling.
you put it in, it's right away.
Right.
That's the Ramah would say. It's what's the language of the Ramah? Yeah, the Ramah doesn't say it, but it's maluach keratuach, maliach keratuach.
Rama doesn't speak about pickling. He only says about salting.
Oh, so that question becomes about vinegar, because the Ramah over here says, go look in Siman Ayin, where I talk about meat that fell into brine.
Right.
And over there he says, because maliach is keratuach, because salting is like boiling, therefore the flavor transfer happens right away. So Ramah is much more
Basically, like
machmir.
if it falls into the salting
Kosher
brine,
meat falls
then
into a
it's
non-kosher brine
instantly-
right away, non-kosher.
But you're saying the Mechaber put them together.
The Mechaber says that the amount of time it takes to boil, that's how long it takes for the salting to have effect.
Or
which is 18 minutes.
18 minutes.
Or
Not
vinegar or the thing.
and vinegar as well,
And
because
vinegar.
Mechaber puts vinegar and broil together.
The
But,
Rama split.
but the Ramah didn't make a mention of vinegar. The question is, what do we think about vinegar? Because the Ramah only told us, go look in chapter 70 where I talk about brine. What about vinegar? Okay, so the question is where you put on how you place vinegar. And vinegar is a machlekes, as you saw in the summaries. Right, there's a vinegar is a machlekes.
Yeah.
The Shulchan Aruch compares vinegar to brine, which will take 18 minutes in the Shulchan Aruch's view, but others compare vinegar to liquid, which would take 24 hours. Regular liquid. The Alter Rebbe and others differentiate between types of vinegar,
Right.
how sharp it is. If it's very sharp, then it happens right away, like salt. If it's not so sharp, it takes 24 hours. Now, how would you define what's sharp or not sharp? I don't remember where I read it. Maybe it's in the summary or somewhere. I don't remember where I read it. But vinegar, no, if the vinegar is such that you would put it on your salad, then it means not so sharp. It means you eat it alone.
Otherwise, it would be like pungent.
Otherwise, it would be too pungent. Yes. Otherwise, it would be too pungent too. I'm trying to remember where I read it. I don't remember.
We discussed it.
We discussed it, but I read it somewhere.
Yesterday, I think.
Sharp vinegar is like salty juice. Edible vinegar has the halach of water. Edible vinegar, yeah, it's edible vinegar. So it's the kind you would put on your salad, and that would be considered edible. And the salting with the soaking would have to take 24 hours, like water, rather than like salt. Okay, clear so far? Any questions before we go to the next sif? Did I miss anything? No, I think I've got everything here. Let me look over here a second. Make sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah,
They gave like a bottom line on the last for nothing.
which one?
Like just gave you a book and you said, oh yeah, that, and then you didn't give the rule.
Remind me which law?
About like the half and half.
Pickled. Okay, so pickled water. If it's pickling in water, that which is outside of the water, we're lenient on. If it's pickled in anything sharp, then
Brine or vinegar in this case, right?
sorry, that then it travels upward. It travels upward if it's sharp. Yeah,
Unless you're sure it's lean. Unless you're sure it's
unless you're sure it's bleeding in the end, there's a
Yeah.
monetary loss. So here's an interesting practicality that comes out of this. If you pickled your pickles in a vessel for less than 24 hours, and then it got mixed with cheese, do you have a problem or no?
But
Right? Oh, sorry. Yeah, you pickled pickle, whatever, and you pickled a cucumber to make pickles, and it was in a vessel for 24 hours.
And then a piece of cheese went inside.
Yeah,
You took it out right away.
and then you took it out, then you put cheese in, what would happen? And that vessel was fleishik.
Mm-hmm.
It's been more than 24 hours though, so it's already absorbing.
It's already, is it a negative
Pickle,
flavor?
Your cucumber is absorbed.
Yeah.
The piece of cheese that you just
Put in is
inside
absorbing now.
is absorbing from the time you put it in.
Oh,
not
so
from the
it's
beginning.
so it'd be problematic. If it's less than 24 hours, it wouldn't be a problem.
Right.
Yeah, very good.
What about your pickles?
Yeah, but hold on.
Well, your pickles would absorb some of the cheese, no?
No, but hold on. But that's interesting because if
Sorry?
it's a brine,
Yeah.
or it's vinegar,
Yeah.
you said that it's instantly cooking.
Yes.
no, it's
No, no. This
yeah.
is the vessel. Here's a question of the vessel.
Oh, the kli.
The vessel, not the food
Oh.
itself.
But what happens to the
The
food
vessel.
itself?
The vessel will take 24 hours to absorb.
You say,
Uh,
Right. So
No matter
now,
which one.
that's right. Yeah. So if okay, let's just review this. You have a meat vessel,
Mhm.
and then you pickle cucumbers in it.
Yeah.
So you pickled the cucumbers for how long in that meat vessel?
Let's say 2 days.
2 days. So now this cucumber has what flavor? Meat flavor, because it was just pickled
Yeah.
for 24 hours in a meat
Flavor.
thing.
Yeah.
And then you cannot have it with feta cheese on
Yes.
your salad.
Wait, but how long before you pickled it was meat in contact with the vessel?
Oh, good question. Very good question.
Has to be less
But
than.
nonetheless, that's a very, very good question. It's a very good question. But nonetheless, there are those that are strict, that are stringent anyway in this regard, because the sharpness reinvigorates the flavor, making it positive. Yes, that's right. Good question. That's right.
We could be lenient though, no?
That's correct. What?
If there's a loss, we could be lenient now.
Not losing much with cucumbers.
Yeah,
Okay, so it's a.
No, you have a-
Actually, it actually does say in monetary loss, it could be lenient. Yeah.
Some of these briskets are expensive.
Give it back.
Huh?
All of them.
Yeah.
Thanks for who? Monter. Boy, that's how it is.
I know.
Everyone.
That's right. That's right. The sharpness, that's a good question. The sharpness reinvigorates the flavor that was there, even though it was over 24 hours. Okay, let's go now
So
to
the
the next
cheese would
sif.
be an issue.
The cheese would be if there was, that's right. So if those cucumbers were pickled in a fleishik jar for more than 24 hours, you couldn't eat it with your shredded cheese salad.
Right, but the
But
kale
piece
is
of
fine.
cheese that
The
fell
kale
inside.
is fine. Yeah. I made a mistake by mixing.
Yeah,
That was a mistake. Sorry.
yeah.
But what
The
happens?
kale
to
needs
cheese?
24 hours, but the food itself is instant.
It's instant. Yes, correct. That was your point. Yeah, Mayor. That's correct. Yeah, sorry. Thank you for the correction. Yes.
So what happened with the piece of cheese?
No. That was a mistake. He's
Oh,
correct.
no.
It happens instantly.
Instantly.
Oh,
That's what we just
so
learned.
something
It's
falls
sharp,
into
yes.
instantly?
Because it's sharp.
Correct,
So
sharp.
that means that the piece of cheese that fell in there
Would be
Yeah.
automatic. Would be instantly
forbidden.
correct.
It have to be a watery mixture.
Would it be a water mixture?
Unless
Yes.
it's batal b'shishim.
Sorry.
Unless it's
Batal b'shishim. Yes. We're assuming
But
now.
then, no,
We're not learning the laws of bittul now, so
but I'm
assuming it's
saying,
not
but
batal b'shishim.
if it's sharp, it should also be 18 minutes. It doesn't even need to be 24
No,
hours.
because
No,
it's
be
brine
instant,
or
right?
vinegar,
Because
it's
we
instant.
are machmir to say it's instant
Oh.
like the Ramah, right?
No, I'm saying even if it's 18 minutes, I'm saying even if the pickles were sitting there for 18 minutes.
But the 18 minutes doesn't apply
Oh,
In sharp.
in a sharp
Right.
brine or vinegar because
Right.
it's instant. It's like if you
Yeah.
have a
Yeah, but
Yeah.
here you have a different case here. You don't have any meat in there. Saying the meat
went into the vessel.
I don't know.
So now you put
Yeah, because the principle that the davar charif is mashbiach the flavor, the tam.
Right.
The sharpness of the brine reinvigorates and makes the flavor positive. Which is another question that the rabbi might ask when he's asking these questions. Did you fry it with garlic? Did you fry it with onions? Because if you have sharp things, it'll change the law. I didn't use the pot in 24 hours, but now when you just made it with cheese, did you have egg cheese with salt and with garlic and onions in there, which might reinvigorate the flavor? Did you saute the onions and garlic first? Right, that would make a difference as well. Now, okay, let's now go to the next thing. We're running out of time. We'll have to just continue on Friday rather than redo this because it's going to take more time. But shouldn't be too much. Sorry.
Oh, that's what time it is. I realize I'm wearing my
Yeah.
watch because my phone's dead.
All right, Bays. Okay, Chaim Shel Kriyishain, the heat of a first vessel, Shayat Soledes boy, where the hand recoils from it. This is a principle all across halacha, including Shabbos and other areas of halacha, where Yad Soledes boy means is the definition of hot. The hand recoils.
Mhm.
The definition of hand recoils is very difficult to imagine because if I happen to be a guy who's a welder, my hand will recoil at a much higher rate than if you're a sensitive guy who stands by the computer types on a desk, right? So it's going to make it, the person's sensitivity is different from one to the other. So to just say, oh, did your hand recoil is not really enough.
Good child.
Sorry?
Has to be like a child.
Oh, so the principle is we go to the softest skin possible, which is like a baby stomach. So it's somewhere, different opinions, either it's 40 Celsius or it's 45 Celsius or 43 Celsius, somewhere in that range. That's where it is. Okay.
Doesn't necessarily.
Yeah. So, but the point is like this: that the cleavage ratio in the first vessel in which I cooked something, even if it's off the fire,
Mhm.
so long as it's above this yad soledes boy, this hand recoiling definition, nevashela cooks. Continues the Shulchan Aruch, and everything becomes forbidden if it's kosher and non-kosher mixed together. Aval, but the heat of a second vessel. So I took the content that was in the first vessel and poured it into another. Einam vashel doesn't cooked. Okay, so let's first understand this principle in of itself. So you have two pots in front of you. One is at, let's say, 60 degrees, and one is at 50 degrees. The 60 degrees will not cook, and the 50 degrees will cook. How is that? Because the 50 degrees is a clear it's the first vessel. It's taken off the flame, and it's at 50 degrees right now. So it's above Yad Soledes, but it's above the hand recoiling. So we're going to consider it cooking. But then but then another pot, which came from a pot that was 70 degrees and now it's 60 degrees, because it's a cliché, because it was transferred to the next pot, it's no longer cooking. Halachically speaking, this is true of Shabbos also, for making your coffee on Shabbos, right? So where's the logic in this? You follow my question?
Yeah, but it would be wouldn't the pot that's 60 is if the second pot was 60 or 70 degrees, then it would cook what you're pouring in there. It's a kli rishon as well.
No. So if I
You can
two
use
different
empty
pots.
pot.
Two different pots,
Uh-huh.
right? One's a clear and I take it off before it gets too hot,
Yeah.
and now it's at 50 degrees.
Okay.
The other one, I left it go up to 70. I poured it out into another pot. Now it's 60 degrees. So I have 60 degrees one side klisheni,
Ah.
which is second pot, and one here, that's the first pot, then it's only 50 degrees. And the 50 degrees, if you
Pour it
cook
in.
on Shabbos, it's forbidden. Cook on Shabbos with the second pot, which is 60 degrees, no problem.
Mhm.
Same thing here. That the Shulchan Aruch is telling us that the first pot, which is 60 degrees, is cooking the two things that are together, transferring flavor. The one that's 60 degrees cuts in a second pot is not transferring flavors. Where's the logic in this? So the truth is that as far, sorry?
Because the walls of the second one are
Okay,
cold.
that's what the halacha says. Because the walls are cold, okay, but how does it change, how does it change the science of it?
Because it automatically cools off the hotter pot that goes into it.
So maybe this is what you're saying, and this is something I thought about when I learned Hilchos Shabbos. I thought about this, and I think it's a logical thing. This is my own little svara. You can tell me what you think. It's based on Isaac Newton's principle of motion. That everything that's in motion stays in motion. So it's not a question like from Isaac Newton. It's not a question of where it is, but what's the direction it's taking. Sorry?
Isn't that inertia?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Isaac Newton's law of motion, right? Isn't that right? That everything is defined by the direction it's taking rather than by where it is right
I
now.
understand. So one's
So-
cooling, one's heating.
A Kli Rishon is in a state of preserving heat, even though it happens to be losing heat because it's away from the source. But the vessel, because the walls are hot, that's what the halacha says, right? The walls are hot, it's in a state of preservation.
Right.
Whereas in the second vessel, because the walls are cold, even though right now it's very hot, it's in a state of cooling. This is perhaps a sort of, quote, scientific, if that matters, explanation for this. But again, it's only suggested. You're welcome to reject it if it doesn't work for you. Okay. Now comes the next line in the Shulchan Aruch and says like this. V'yesh oimrim, there are those that say, shegamkein einem maflit lo mavli. It doesn't exfoliate or absorb. So one opinion in Klisheni says it doesn't cook. But even if it doesn't cook, maybe it still exfoliates and absorbs. Well, not both. Yeah. V'yesh others say, nonetheless, maflit umavliya. It does give off and take in. And it would be forbidden up into a taking off a shell, taking out the outer layer. Let's explain these principles here. This is important to understand because it can become confusing. When you say cooking, when we say something cooking, mavashal, that means all the flavors in this entire mixture are mixed together from beginning to end. In other words, if you're looking at your cholent, for example, there's no place in your cholent that doesn't have the flavors of all the items in there. Nowhere. You slice the meat open, you have the flavor of everything else. You slice the bean open, you have the flavor of everything else because it's all cooked together, right? Now, is it true then that if in that cholent pot, I take a chicken drumstick and I dunk it in like that and I take it out? What just happened? Does the entire cholent now have flavor of chicken? Does the entire chicken have now flavor of cholent? No. But what did happen is some of the flavor got absorbed in the chicken and some of the chicken went out. That's called maflit mavliya. It gives off and takes in. And therefore, the max it's going to do is only so much that it reaches inward, which is kedei klipa, which is the amount of tearing out the outer layer. Right? That's the only flavor that would be, following the logic here?
For Klisheni, so
In a klisheni, yes. Not in a klirishin, right? Klirishin cooks right away. But klisheni, yes, we clear? Okay, that's the thing here. Right? And therefore, says the Shulchan Aruch continues, it would be appropriate to be lenient in the first instance, and therefore, if such a thing were to happen, we're in a klisheni. That's the point tonight. So you have a klisheni of milk, and a piece of meat fell in. So you take it right away out. Do you have to throw the whole piece of meat out? Says the Shulchan Aruch, even if you're beginning to be machmer, all you need to do is peel the outer layer of the meat, and you can keep the rest of the steak. Right? And post factum, if you washed it off, that would be enough according to the Shulchan Aruch. Yeah, we clear on this?
This is if it's cold, right? It'll be hot and it's
Oh, so let's get into that. Yeah. This is what the Shulchan Aruch says. But nonetheless, I think you have it in the summary on the bottom of page 122. I wrote it down. You have it on the bottom of the summary there. However, this is what the Shulchan Aruch writes. However, notwithstanding the Shulchan Aruch's and the Ramah's conclusion that a second vessel that is beyond the point of klisheni, which is beyond Yatzalis, but it's beyond the point of hand broiling, so it's very hot. It only exfoliates and gives in, doesn't actually cook, and therefore only to take out the outer shell. That's the Shulchan Aruch's ruling, and the Ramah agrees with that. Nonetheless, major halachic authorities, including, they put on the list here the Mishnah Berurah and others, they take the view of the Maharshal, which is that if the second cup is so hot that the hand recoils, it does cook, but it doesn't give off and give and take at once, which means like this. For example, if you put a piece of meat and a piece of cheese in a vessel that is a klisheni. So the milk and meat aren't touching each other. So you have, let's say you boiled pasta, so it's parad. You boiled pasta in a pot. You take it off and you pour it into a second pot. Now you're in a klisheni. And now milk and meat go in there. They're not touching each other, the milk and meat. So what's kosher and what's not kosher?
That's very hard to say.
So let's think.
So I think Yavish or Lach.
Let's 2 pieces of yavish, dry cheese, dry milk, dry meat. I'll explain why I'm doing Basar B'chol in a second. Yeah, you'll understand when you ask the answer. But let's think. What's usher? What about the pot itself?
Not cooking. Oh.
What about the pasta?
The pasta is still in the pot?
Yeah,
Okay.
the water in the pasta is in the pot. So I boiled.
So it's pouring.
It's klisheni.
No,
I took what's it like? Let's restore the case again. I boiled a pot of pasta. I poured the pasta into a second pot with the water. So now I have a klisheni of pasta and water. A piece of meat, piece of cheese. They're not touching each other. They're next to each other in the pot. What is kosher? What's not kosher?
What do you mean they're together in the pot?
They're both in the pot at the same time.
In which one? The Kevisha?
Klisheni.
So you poured in the water with the pasta into a pot that had a piece of meat.
No.
Inside?
No. I poured the pasta into an empty klisheni.
Yeah.
Now I have a klisheni full of pasta
And water.
and water. And then into that water goes a piece of meat and a piece of cheese.
How much is each thing worth?
They're worth. It's not. There's no ratio of 60.
No, I'm saying like monetary wise.
Very expensive, very cheap, whatever. What's
And then you remove them right away.
you take them out. What's kosher? What's not kosher?
There's nothing,
No.
only because the problem is the meat.
Is that our
Sorry?
cue?
The
No.
problem with meat and milk is they
You get
first
used
have
to it when you learn.
combined to become asu.
Oh, the milk and meat have to be combined to become usher. So where's the combination happening?
No,
Pasta.
In the pasta. Because we just learned that even though the Marshal says, right, that if the Marshal writes that flavor does go in and out in second keli, but doesn't cook. If it cooked, then all the flavor we transfer to each other, everything would be for usher.
All right.
But klisheni, even though we're being strict like the Marshal and saying that if it's hot enough, it does cause a transfer. But what kind of transfer? Not a cooking transfer, only an exfoliation and an intake. So in this case, the pasta there was exfoliation of both milk and meat into the pasta. Pasta is not kosher.
But what happens?
But the
to
other
meat
two-
or the cheese?
All you have to do is trim off the edge,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
I don't even think you have to do that actually.
Well,
If it didn't touch.
but by
No, they can't. No, it doesn't even. You just wash them off actually.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
because they didn't touch. There's no contact.
Exactly.
There's no transfer of flavor from the meat to the milk, the milk to the meat.
if it
But
touched
there
the
what?
meat-
But they did both exfoliate into that pasta.
hold on. Your pasta is something that you can't feel. If you had a different.
Then it's if you had something you can peel, then it's no longer considered klisheni because it's a solid item. Klisheni, the whole idea of bishul and kalim is
Right.
only, which I want to get to the next principle,
Potato
it's
steak.
only with respect to liquids, where one liquid goes to the next, it goes down and rishon, sheni, shlishi, and so on.
Right, I'm saying you had pasta. What if you had potatoes?
Oh, so now we get to
No, I'm
but
saying
before I
in
get to
a
potato,
pot of water.
it would be the same thing. If it's in a liquid, it's all considered part of the mixture of cooking, like a stew, like a chalut.
You wouldn't peel it?
No, because it's all cooked, the flavor goes through.
So klisheni?
Yeah, that's what he's saying here. The cliche, that's the Marshal's chumrah, that even though it's a klisheni and it doesn't cook like the Shulchan Aruch and u'LeMaaseh, but it still exfoliates and gives off and takes in. Which means if it was a non-kosher piece of meat, then the entire pot would be non-kosher. And so would this, certainly, right? But if it's 2 kosher items that themselves are kosher, they're giving off flavor, but they themselves wouldn't be a problem.
As long as you have the lettuce flavour, right?
So long as it's above Yatzah, as long as it's above the hand recoiling, yes.
What if it was a cliche?
The same thing would apply klish lishi.
Yeah.
Salty.
Yes.
Really? Wow.
Yes,
What's
Barzano, yes.
interesting is that okay, so a lot
The
of
Marshal's
people-
opinion is above, so long as it's above. In other words, the Marshal's opinion is that the Klirishin Klisheni only changes the fact that it doesn't cook, but it still does exfoliate and absorb so long as it's above hand recoiling.
So
Even
now-
if it's klish lishi.
Yeah, so now that this is
Yes.
based on you said pasta, so I just want to use that as an example because
Yeah.
typically people will put a lot of salt in their pasta water. Does that change?
It's not enough to make it salt, to make it a
to
brine.
make it like a brine.
No, it's not enough to make it a brine.
That's it.
It's such, brine is mamish,
No, I
with like,
agree.
think of like, yeah, it's not a brine. Okay,
I understand the difference, but people do put salt and. Yeah, but I understand that there's a difference between salted water and.
Right.
and-
but now conversely, if I had take the same scenario, not a boiling pot of pasta, but a French onion soup. Okay, I forgot the onion part. A cream of pumpkin soup, which has like blended butter in it.
Yeah.
And a piece of meat, and so I boiled it on a pot. I emptied it out to a second pot. So now my cream of pumpkin is in this cliché. It's my bowl, my table. Piece of meat falls in. I pull the piece of meat out. What's kosher? Is anything kosher?
Can you repeat that?
No,
So
The
I
soup
took
would
I,
not be
not
kosher,
kosher,
but
the
the
soup-
meat would have to be trimmed off. Based on what you just said with the pasta.
it's both exfoliate
It's-
and absorb.
Yeah, but it's touching the actual butter. So
Right.
So
So then it's going to be non-kosher.
kosher. Yeah,
But
both
even though
things.
it's a cliché,
beer keli.
correct, even though it's a cliché
What about
and
your
it's not mavashal, even though it's a cliché and it's not cooking,
Yeah.
but nonetheless, as per Rashal, which we just said,
Yeah.
it
both
absorbs
the
and exfoliates, and therefore the meat is going to give off flavor into the soup. And if it's not 60
gonna
times
be-
ratio, it would become
Right.
forbidden.
So the soup
Yeah.
and the meat will both become treif. Will both become like you can't eat them
The meat would
because it's also butter. It's absorbing the butter.
Want to use the chillin example again?
yet.
But your keli is fine though. Maybe
Say again,
the
yeah.
keli is fine.
The keli would be presumably would be fine, yeah.
The keli would be fine, right?
Yeah, the keli would be fine, seemingly. So we just have to wash it off.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you want to ask about the challenge?
You
Yeah.
want to give the chillin example yet? So if it's in the actual crock pot, you put a chicken leg in.
That's cliché. That's tradition
Yeah.
on the flame, cooking right away.
What about the second? Let's say you put it like at NTC, they put it in the glass bowl.
So you put it in a glass bowl, and then what falls in there?
Chicken leg. If it's a
If it's a non-kosher
part-
chicken leg.
No, if it's a part.
Oh, it's a
whatever.
power of cholent,
Yeah.
and a chicken leg falls in there. So now, okay, so let's get to cholent in a second. Let's imagine the cholent is very liquidy, so far as the case goes right now. Then it would be
Translation.
it would
Yeah.
become flacic, yeah,
Yeah.
because again, it exfoliates. Yes, correct. It would become flacic. Following this law, yes, very good.
Right. And would the keli become treif if it was a Kevisha?
If it was a kli rishon, would the keli become? Yeah, it would absorb. Yeah,
So exactly. So the only reason it doesn't become treif is
I think it's because of
cliché.
cliché. I think you're correct. That's a good
I
question.
just-
Let's put a
I
pin in that, but I think that's correct. I believe that's
Make
correct.
sure.
Okay, two more things I want to add before we go. Number one, okay, we didn't get to Iro yet, the pouring out business.
So the pouring, right? That
Pouring
was-
out business. So we treat, right, there's a machlokes about pouring out, sorry,
Pouring out the-
meaning you have a
Pouring.
clear rishon,
Yeah, and you're pouring.
which is, I don't know,
It's your pasta.
non-kosher.
It's your pasta with your.
It's non-kosher. Let's just say it's not kosher, yeah? And it's being poured out onto something that's kosher, it renders it non-kosher. So machlokes, if the stream broke,
Mhm.
which means let's say I threw the water onto it, so there's no stream that connects from top to bottom. There's no kiluach. There's no stream that connects. There are those that are lenient, but the Alter Rebbe anyways is stringent. Okay, and then finally, the next thing I want to say is, if you're pouring out from a second vessel, pouring out of klesheni, definitely not even according to the Rashal, which is stringent of that it exfoliates and absorbs. It won't do that if you're pouring out of a second keli. That agrees with. Another point to be made is ladles are counted as what? Kli rishon or sheni. So soup pot.
Well, it depends. Is it on the fire?
Shiny,
Is it on the fire? Then
Sorry?
If it's on the fire, if the pot is on the fire, and you take
Yeah.
Go into the pot while it's on the
Fire,
fire.
then
It's
you're
different
gonna-
than if you're
you
taking
take-
it
you
while
take the
it's
pot
off the fire.
right? That's the difference. Definitely with Shabbos, I don't know.
So we're actually machmer on that. Alter is machmer in that regard. Alter is machmer that ladles are considered kedushin.
Even if it's off the fire.
Yeah, to the best of my remember.
Well,
Because it's in the Kli Rishon to begin
Yeah.
with.
Even if the pot's off the fire, because
Yeah.
I think
Not,
Ashkenaz is
no, when I was learning Semichas Haver,
Yeah, Alter is machmer
we
here.
spoke about this, and it's the Kevisha. You're putting the thing in, it takes on.
Takes on the kedushin.
Takes on
When
the
So
you
let-
say your
for-
soup
yes.
is not a cliché,
No, it's a cliché. Correct. Your soup bowl.
Cliche does not.
Your
You put
cle-
something
your-
in the cliche does not.
your soup bowl is a cliché, even though you use the ladle,
Yes.
because the ladle takes on the
Yes.
halacha of the kedushin because it went into it.
Mhm.
Okay.
But if you take
All
from a
these
Kli
laws-
Rishon,
Yeah.
all these laws on cliche
Yeah.
and like the port and the emission and
Yeah.
absorption. That's only if it's hot enough for your hand to recoil.
Correct. Only if it's hot enough for your hand to recoil. Correct. Which we said is only 40 degrees, not so high. Right? Okay, final halacha is davar gush. That's an important principle. Davar gush. Davar gush means a solid item. The whole principle of of which it follows that it actually works using my little theory here of inertia. With the whole lowering of status from Kevisha to Klisheni and so on is only if what's being poured out is a liquid. But if what's moving is a solid, which means it stands on its own, doesn't need walls to hold it up, because again, it's the walls that turn it into a Klisheni. If you have a cold wall, it's turning the items into Klisheni. But it doesn't need a wall to hold it up. It's standing on its own. So your hot potato, then it always retains the status of Klish Rishon, even if it's transferred multiple times. Because it itself is a self-contained preservant of heat. It doesn't require the pot that it's being, or the vessel it's being transferred to. Okay,
Pasta wouldn't fall under that.
so that's why I mentioned pasta with the water. Because it's with the water, it's being cooked. But you're right, pasta alone may not have that status of Klisheni because it's already solid. It doesn't have that ability. Okay, any questions before we close out? Yeah. Oh, that's yours. Sorry. Want to make sure I covered everything. Get my notes. I think I covered everything. Is there anything we didn't cover?
No.
No? Okay, very good. And if you finish this week's quota, wonderful. God willing, next week we start Gimel, Sif Gimel. Okay, wonderful evening, everybody.
Okay.
Friday is going to be the pretty much. I don't know if anybody. I'm going to post in the group to see if anybody's coming, but I think everybody was here already.
It's wrong.
He's not in
He's not in town Friday, so if anybody's not, if nobody's going to come Friday, I'm just going to keep this year and we'll go Sunday to the next subject. Okay, have a wonderful evening, everybody.